We want to talk about everything. We want to give the fans a chance to comment. But we're going to bring in, I guess, a first guest tonight. This is a surprise guest. This is Blue Def After Dark. We usually just kind of freestyle it, but we actually got a chance to bring in someone who is a expert, they say, on discipline. And when I say they, Doug Brown is he co-signs that because he knew firsthand about this gentleman. He is a conference-winning coach. He I think he coached defensive ends, D-line. And he's also a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Let me bring in former assistant coach on the George Small, Mr. Coach Don Hauser. Coach, how you doing?
Gentlemen, thank you so much for that. Was an intro that was probably a little bit over the top, Doug.
No.
I owe you a check, I think, Doug Brown. Mr. Turner, good to see you, sir. How are you doing, my old friend?
Doing great, Coach. How you been?
Doing good. Was thrilled to hear from Dougie today. Doug, I don't think you've aged a day in the years that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Don't feel like it sometimes, but I try.
Oh, I see. I get to follow you a little bit and see you with your family, and I sent out a comment earlier that you guys do more for me than I could ever have done for you, and seeing the dad that you are and everything, I just as a coach, it's great to see what you champs have been doing all around.
Oh, man,
so I'm happy to be here.
Coach Hauser, you got a unique perspective because you came with Coach George Small. I believe your first year here in Nagaland was 2003, and that was on the heels of replacing a legendary coach and Coach Bill Hayes. And I believe your guy here, Doug, was a sophomore at the time. You're a sophomore in 2003?
Yes, sir.
And you guys had to take, I'm pretty sure it was a unique experience because there were people who were coaches who were loyal to Bill Hayes, and they had to kind of find out about your new style and buy into you guys. But you guys were able to put that all together, and in one dream season, you went in and won the MEAC championship. How important was discipline in that title
run? I don't know that coming in, we knew the importance that it was going to play. I think Coach Small might have had an idea much better than us. As far as the assistant coaches. And you're right. Coach Hayes, he most definitely left the cupboard full. We had some players on that team. And looking back and looking over the years that I've followed you guys, the cupboard's never too empty there at North Carolina A&T with the proud tradition that you guys have. But coming in, perhaps, and I can't speak for Coach Small at all, but I think he saw some things while he was an assistant coach at Youngstown State and some of the success that YSU had in the 90s. He wanted to bring a little bit of that to North Carolina A&T. And Dougie can attest to just how much of a difference that made. But I will say this. Talking to NFL scouts as they came in and stuff throughout the year and the year after and stuff like that. Some people were kind enough to make a comment that they did notice a little bit of a difference in the attitude of the program. And I'd like to think that we had a little bit to do with that.
Okay. So Coach, you're a former Marine, right?
Yes, sir.
And I can tell by your the way you carry yourself right now, you're mostly a no nonsense type of guy, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think if you talk to the D linemen and the linebackers, I had them first spring. I think they would probably say I brought a little too much of the Marine Corps back with me, maybe at times.
Okay, so it was, I sat down with Coach Small and interviewed him a number of times, and he was always so gracious with his time. He seemed like one of the nicest people on earth. And would it be fair to say that he was a player's coach? Is that a fair summation?
I think having all the playing experience he had, having been part of the Blue Def family, and being an A&T alum, I think he was more that fatherly figure, and perhaps in his wisdom, that's why he brought some of us young coaches that didn't mind being disliked at the beginning of the season. So
now that was my point. So basically, they have that whole phrase, "good cop, bad cop," right? So
Yes,
did you understand your assignment as that you were the bad cop in that equation, that you had to be a little in wrestling, say baby faces and heel. You had to be the heel in that situation.
That's just who I was. It really
Okay.
was just my nature. And we had Coach Lee as well, who wasn't
Right.
short
Okay.
on discipline whatsoever. I just think it's, again, a testament to Coach Small, just knowing the personalities he brought in. At one point, I was seriously thinking about staying at Youngstown State, and he had called me up a second or a third time. He said, "Donnie, I need you down here." And after our first couple of practices in spring ball, I kind of understood what he meant. And I tread lightly here,
I
Mr. Turner,
understand.
Doug. I don't want to say that there wasn't discipline on that team. But one of the things I always talked about. Oh,
prior to you guys' arrival, that's exactly what we struggled with. I mean, it was a team that I think lost 4 or 5 games and less than 12 points, and like you said, a lot of talent. Just overall discipline, just within the guys, just wasn't there. And so I'll be proud to say that you guys as a staff, but mostly you as just your mentality was just the catalyst for change in the right direction towards discipline.
Doug, can you point to like the tipping point where things kind of got a little bit too loose? Was it was it always like that?
I can't say. Well, I can speak for myself. I can name many a times when I went overboard, in between the lines and outside the lines. And for me, it came to a head when Coach Hayes got fired, and I was fussing with a fan in the stands, kind of at the edge of the rail. Someone who had heckled us early in the year and heckled Coach Hayes, and that was like heckling my dad. So down in the Georgia Dome, the guys heckling us at the end of the game, and I'm over there and I'm fussing with them. Guys pulling me back, and I'm in the locker room. I'm upset, and that staff I was really close to. So when Coach Hauser and those guys came in, those guys don't know who Doug Brown is or his affiliation with A&T or why he's here. By the time they got here, I think I got hurt in the spring. I hurt my back lifting weights. So, I'm on the sidelines watching. So I really don't, have much of a dog in the fight at that time. And it just was a tough time. But I was able to see from the sideline the change that was taking place in the spring that year. And kind of the line that those guys drew, like, hey, either you're with us or you're not with us. But we know what it's going to take. And I always say the first thing that I remember, Coach Hauser, is you guys coming in and showing the Youngstown State highlight clip, which basically was just highlights of Youngstown State's the end of their plays, right? There weren't any football highlights you could see. It was the celebration. And you guys heard me talk about that before, how you celebrate with your team. The whole highlight tape was just Youngstown State celebrating at the end of the play with their team, right? You couldn't tell what happened during the play. It was just clip after clip of them celebrating, all 10 guys on the field running at each other, celebrating with the guy who made the big play. Now notice it's the guy who made the play, getting with the other 10 guys. It's not the guy who didn't make the play celebrating it and showing his tail, because we knew you were going to have to answer to Coach Hauser, whether it was a special teams meeting. He was going to sit right there in the film with me, and I hope he gets a chance to tell you about that. But he's going to be right there, and he's going to have that pointer, and he's going to have his moment of the week to be able to call you out if you were loafing, if you were doing anything that was selfish, like celebrating or bringing attention to yourself. And it just really changed our mindset and just how our perspective on how football is played as a team and why it's a team game and why you don't do things to bring attention to yourself. But until that moment, until those guys got there, we were still very much playing as individuals at times. And it's easy to see when you turn on football today who's being selfish and who's playing for themselves, and the teams that play as teams and play for each other.
So Coach Hauser, how important was it to instill that accountability? And what ways were you able to do that?
Well, it just kind of it was something that uh, made sense and went along with good football. Like Doug Brown said, the things that we instill, like handing the ball to the official after every play, it wasn't just because that's a good thing to do. It's if we're handing the ball to the official after every play, that means we had possession of the ball at the end of the play. Celebrating together. The game's just a little bit more fun. We love the celebrations. I think I told the defensive line all the time, if we get a 15-yard penalty because the entire team's out there, I'll take those all day long. And I think maybe we might have got one of those against South Carolina State at one point. It wasn't the Florida A&M game. That was a different beast there. I think it manifested itself, and I was thinking about this today after I got the call from Doug, that enthusiasm for each other. I think, Doug, you'll have to help me with my memory here. It was maybe the third or fourth game. We went down the road to the Phoenix to Elon.
Yeah.
Elon.
And our backs were up against the wall. That was a game that I don't think we were going to win at a certain point. But we picked up a fumble on the sideline, taken in for a score. And I really think that was the of the team together. I really think that was maybe, Doug talked about a tipping point with Coach Hayes' staff. That was probably the tipping point for our season that year.
Okay. And Coach, if you can, just speak on how young people are they're passionate and they have their own little quirks. But one thing I found out about young people, they pick up on hypocrisy pretty quick. And you can't be a phony around people. I mean, even little kids, they might not know it, but there's something wrong about this. Talk about this as a coach, and you're trying to instill discipline. You're trying to change the culture. How important is this for you to be credible and consistent in what you're doing?
I think that's the main key. Number one, be yourself and be consistent. And ultimately, I think whether it's young kids or high school, college, even up into the pros, I believe that, Doug, you can shoot me down on this. I think there's a desire for that discipline. I think our kids feel unloved if there's not that discipline. It wasn't tough at A&T to get that going, to get that ball rolling, because our kids already had a little genuine love for each other. And we taught them that, fun is playing fast together. They ate that up. I remember the championship film at the end of the season. It led into the next preseason of the 2004 season. Our big young offensive lineman, Doug, you're going to have to help me with his name, but he looks into the camera. He says, "You want to know the secret? Be a family." And you can't have a family without that discipline. I think that's biblical.
Yeah. So Coach, tell us what you're doing now, man, because it looks like you should be on the sideline. I hope you're not retired, because you got a lot of football in you, I can tell.
I was retired for a little while there. I ended up in a roundabout way in the chemical plants in the Houston area, which is kind of where I settled down into.
Okay. What part of Houston? What part of
It's
Houston?
the east side of Houston now. I'm on the far east side of Houston now.
Like Chip Channel, all that. Huh? Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was, but
okay.
It gets a little too busy for me there.
Yeah.
So I just got back into high school coaching again this year. It just happened to work out. I am back on the sidelines. It's Anahuac High School in Southeast Texas. And I would liken this team that I'm with right now a lot to that A&T team. We've got a huge amount of talent, and we're trying to get them to figure out how to practice. And if we can do that, they can be special.
So it starts with practice. Yeah. Well, there's some lucky guys, man. Lucky group of kids that have you on board. Like I said, you were the catalyst to that team, kind of heading in the right direction and getting that discipline going in the right way. And those guys, any of those guys on that team will tell you they appreciate, whether they appreciated you in the moment, they grew to appreciate you, and they knew how much fun you brought to the team. I mean, Coach Hauser is that guy that's going to dive in the puddle on a cold, wet day, just to get the team excited and get them motivated for practice. He's the guy that's there for the team years later when he's not even coaching at the A&T, when something happens and we're in the mischief and you look up, we're all out at the hospital checking on one of the guys, and in walks Coach Hauser. It's like, who called Coach Hauser? How did he know that something was wrong? But he's just there for you. And like you said, it's funny you guys touched on it, but the consistency that he provided, not only day in and day out inside the meeting rooms, but in life. There were times when you literally thought, man, I'm going to have to answer to Coach Hauser, or Coach Hauser would be disappointed in me, right? Because he set that standard, and he was the same way the entire time he was there. But the energy he brought to the team, the special teams, because a lot of guys, didn't really understand what it meant to be in the military and what those values brought. And so for him to bring a little bit of that to the table and kind of, bring that over to the football world and incorporate that in the special teams. And I mean, it made all the difference in the world, man. And I saw guys really take off, like you said. The guys ate it up, and we saw it as a winning formula. And I see guys still prospering from it to this day. So really appreciate you, Coach. Like I said, those guys are a lucky group of guys, and I know when the guys get on here and see that we had you on, they're gonna be mad that I didn't let them know earlier. But
yeah, Deloach, we had Deloach on here a couple weeks ago. He probably loved to be on. I
set up at the game and talked to him, man, and you'd be surprised. I mean, that's kind of, we both kind of thought about you, but we set up at the game and just talked about what we brought to the team, and he was like, man, I don't ever remember having that many special teams penalties, and I was making returns or things like that. And we just talked about, wow, we were like, that was unacceptable. There was no such thing as having a penalty, because coach is going to call you out. He's going to call you out for making that mistake. And you didn't want to let the team down. But before the end of the season, like you said, we were kind of holding ourselves accountable. We knew what the expectation was. Wow. And you guys set the example, and it made it fun. It made football, like you said, fast, fun, and made it easy. So, like you said, it created that confidence that we believe. You guys preach believe it, and we never had any doubt. So we appreciate it.
Craig, you got anything you want to chime in on?
No, I think Coach Hauser hit the nail right on the head. It's about team first, and not the individual. And hopefully, our guys will be a lot better next week and for the rest of the season.
And if so, look, I mean, what Coach Hauser and Doug are talking about is proven results. These guys won the national, MEAC championship in 2003, where they won. I think we went 4-8 the previous season. So in one off season with that turnaround, and it was Coach Hauser and his fellow assistants instilling that culture, but Doug Brown and his fellow players buying into it. So it was a marriage. And look what it produced. Doug has a hardware show. I'm sure you probably had that ring somewhere too, Coach Hauser. But
oh yeah,
and that's something they can never take from you, and that's something that this group of players, Aggie players, they can obtain it too. It's right there in front of them. But Coach, you've been so gracious with your time, and thank you for coming on short notice. We'd like to bring you back if you have a chance. We can get a free weekend of high school football. We'd like to pick your brain on some defensive stuff and some more discipline stories. But thank you so much for coming out.
No, I appreciate it very much, Champ. Thank you so much. Always great to hear from you, Mr. Turner. Good seeing you, and that you're still doing this stuff for the Aggie Nation and Aggie Pride. Keep on rolling with it.
Aggie Pride. Thank you so
Aggie
much, Coach.
Pride. Thank you, Coach.
Take care.
Have a good night, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Coach Don Hauser.
Yeah. That's my guy, man.
All right, so Doug, you earned your keep around here. You brought in a big time guest out of the blue. I didn't have to do anything.
He knows what he's talking about, man.
Yeah, and very appropriate.
That was
simple
like formula.
Oh
simple
man,
formula, but it works, man. But you're right on time.